Steve, I don't have a joke to start the show this week. I think we're all business this week, but it's for a good reason. All right,
Okay.
you excited? You
I'm
excited?
excited.
Okay,
It's a podcast recording day. It's a wonderful
there
day.
we go. There you
Apparently we're
go.
all down to business though. It's a business day.
We're focused on business. That is, I think, the word of the day, and that comes from Pete Gonzalez, whose son is going to sign at Penn State to play football at Penn State. Pete also happens to be a former Pitt player and Pittsburgh Steeler, and also spent some time in the CFL. And we spent some time with him today, and had a great interview. But first, I need to give you the name of the podcast, which is Stuff Somebody Says
Steve.
with Steve. So let you listen to that interview. We're also going to talk about some Tom Allen stuff, and then we're also going to talk the bowl game because I think this will probably be the last time we talk before the bowl game, Steve. So take a listen to our interview with Pete. It's great, a lot of energy. Um, it's a really good behind the scenes interview. I'm excited about the way this one turned out. Steve, today we are joined, I think, one of our most exciting gets ever, but also one of our most interesting gets ever because he's not only a former Pitt quarterback, he also spent time with the Steelers and in the CFL, but that's not really why we're talking to him today at all. In fact, we were talking about his son, who is committed to Penn State and will sign his letter of intent on Wednesday this week.
Oh,
Pete Gonzalez joins us to talk about
yeah.
his son and Peter, who plays football as a wide receiver at Pitt Central Catholic. Pete, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to chatting it up a little bit. Love to talk. I love to talk.
All right, that's perfect. That's great. That's great. All right, so let's address the elephant in the room. You are a Pitt grad. You're a former Pitt quarterback. What was it like the moment that your son came to you and said, "Dad, I think I want to go to Penn State"?
You know, he didn't have to come to me. I kind of saw the process take its course, right? One thing about our family is we're a business family, right? I own a number of businesses, and I've taught my son from an early age how to think in a business sense and analyze things in a business sense. And college football has become a business, right? You have to approach it as an entrepreneur now, as an athlete, right? So, we started looking at the dynamics of recruiting. We saw the schools that were heavily recruiting Peter, the schools that really had their desire to communicate, their desire to engage. And I did raise him to be a Panther. I did, guide him to many football games. I did encourage him and prop him as much as I could. Both myself and his mother, and his grandmother went to Pitt. His grandfather went to Pitt. His aunt went to Pitt. And there's about 4 or 5 other people that went to the University of Pittsburgh. So he had a lot of encouraging. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, the schools that really show an interest and have a desire to build that relationship with that young person. And, Miami did a great job. Virginia Tech did a real good job. Terry Smith, outshined because he started really early. Terry and I have known each other for years through the coaching ranks. Obviously, I've always respected Terry and Harvey, his brother. Those guys were, in the community have been, role models to younger guys like myself. So when he called on Peter, ninth grade year to learn what he was doing, he was a basketball player, right? And he heard that Peter had some size, some skills. And, he and I were talking as friends. And I say, hey, keep an eye on him. I don't know if he's going to play football, but if he does, he might have a chance. And so be it. Terry was engaged pretty early. But I do have to say, Pat Arduzzi was engaged at the age of 6. So, he had, or at the age of 9, because I was an honorary captain, and he was at the table with Peter. So he had a shot early as well. So it was a little bit disappointing, but, we're a business family. Penn State put in the time, Miami put in the time, Virginia Tech put in the time, and we made a decision, and Peter made a decision based on his future.
You spoke about it there a little bit, but what was different about your recruitment and your son's recruitment, both, in terms of the business aspect of college football it is now versus back then, but also from your perspective of being him and now being a dad?
Yeah, I think, my recruitment, I was blind, right? I was a first generation American. My father was a Cuban American that came to this country for an opportunity. My mother came from Honduras, and told her mom, I'm going to America, left a note at her mom's, doorstep and left and came to the United States. So my guidance that I had was really, my parents were just happy that I went to college, right? My parents were just happy that I was staying out of trouble, right? I was supposed to take over the family business. So I didn't have guidance in terms of, how to prepare for college or education wasn't on the forefront of our family. They were just preparing us to work, right? Because they worked and they provided, so they were preparing me to work, right? So I was very blind going to school. I didn't know what I wanted. I mean, I was a pretty successful quarterback myself. I was recruited by Miami, Florida State, some of the top programs in the country, right? And I didn't know what I wanted out of an education. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a guide. I didn't have any of that. So by the grace of God, I ended up at the University of Pittsburgh, which was a great school, and things went well for me. With Peter, it's a whole different story. With Peter, he had two college-educated parents. Both of us played college sports, right? He grew up in a household, that we value education. We value, a career, right? And we also know that we have to use football to get ahead in life, right? We were looking at football as, let's use the game, let the game use you, right? When I was coming up, the game used us, right? We weren't focused on so much academics. You see what I'm saying? So for him, it was sort of different. And I think, one of the things that players coming out today need to understand, and one thing Peter understood at early ages, when you're going to colleges and you're engaging these coaches, you're always being evaluated. You know what I mean? So he knew that from the beginning. Like since day one, I never let him. I let him understand it was business, right? Listen, you're in it. Anytime you go to camp, it's an interview. It's a job interview. You see what I'm saying? Know how to look coaches in the eye, shake their hands, speak to them correctly. You know what I'm saying? Be respectful. Anybody that recruits you, it's a blessing. For somebody to want you, I don't care what level it is or what school it is. It's an honor. There's only so many people that could do this. You see what I'm saying? There's only so many people that get picked to do this. So that's, I think, the biggest difference. He had some guidance between his mother and I. We've gone through the process, right? And I would say that I was blinded, and he had some direction.
So you gave that direction, right? You're driving home. Everything's an interview. Everything's an opportunity. That's some of the stuff you did do. Was there anything you bit your tongue on and let him figure out himself, or like, what did you intentionally not do, if anything, during this process?
Yeah, I didn't push him towards any program, right? I didn't script anything he did. I let him be himself at all these visits, right? And I've never been a person to be involved in his life where he has to do things a certain way. You see, it's his journey, right? It's his book. He's writing the chapters. I'm just happy to be a part of it, right? So when I look at Peter, it's like, I did my thing, right? His mom did her thing, right? We wrote our books. I got my chapters. My name's in stone at Pitt, right? Now I'm a part of you. So my philosophy is I'm feeding my kids focus every time, right? What is your focus? Well, he has a desire to play at the next level. Well, we'll feed that focus. We'll take you to camps. We'll work out. We'll do that, right? So a lot of what he did in terms of, the game itself was self-discovery, right? Because he had to learn on his own. But a lot of on the visits too, I just let him be himself. I said, just be yourself. They're looking at you. Be Peter Gonzalez, right? Let them understand who you are. So I was very limited in that process. I just let him understand the business side of the game. You see what I'm saying?
I'm hearing you, but I also know, I think I know, it's been 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
You're a pretty emotional, strong-willed dude.
Yeah.
How are you as a parent? Like, how are you as parent fan? Like in the stands, I'm listening, forget the recruiting spin. Take me to the stands at a football game. How are you there?
I don't sugarcoat it. I mean, honest to God, in the stands, I think I'm like every other parent, right? I get excited for a big play of any kid, right? I get excited when I see my kid do well. I get pissed when I see my kid do bad. I'm like, what the hell are you doing, bro? You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm a fan, to be honest with you. And so that's the role that I play. And I'm kind of happy because I coached the last couple of years that I coached them. So to be in the stands this year, I was really a fan. So it was a lot of fun, to be honest with you, because I get to talk crap on the coaches too, right? Because everybody in the damn stands talk shit on me when I was coaching. Now I get a chance to say, you know what, you sucker, you sucked on that one, right? So from that perspective, but I'm honestly brutal with Peter. When he doesn't do well, I let him know. I said, listen, brother, you got to go back to the drawing board. It wasn't good. You know what I mean? When he does well, I speak to him about the good things he did well and how he can improve in some areas, right? So it's kind of like a fine balance, right? I'm like a coach mentor type of deal, but I think as a parent, you never stop coaching your kids, right? You always keep at it. It doesn't matter how old they get. You know what I mean? You just keep at it all the time. So I'm passionate as a parent. I'm passionate for all the kids, to be honest with you. I enjoy watching all the kids go out there and play and give it the best. In my household, the one thing that takes zero talent is effort, right? And that's expected. If you ain't doing that, I'm not letting you step on the field. That's just the way it is around here. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So as long as you go out there and give it your best and go at it, man, we're good with that. let the chips fall where they may at that point.
Ooh. You talked about relationships there at the beginning a little bit. I want to ask you specifically, how do you develop relationships with the coaches, and how does that kind of gauge or a barometer for you on, my son, I feel confident in the choice that my son's making?
Yeah, I think, I've been privy to know some of these guys, some of their NFL history. I've been privy to know some of their college history, right? We've crossed paths in the past, some of them are high school history, right? So I kind of know what type of coaches they are. But because I've been through the process and I've been on the good side of coaching and I've been on the bad side of coaching, I had an experience at Pitt that early on was terrible. It wasn't good. It wasn't a good environment. Later on, it became a very good environment for me as a player. And I saw things that were done through coaches and promises that were made in the recruiting process that were never delivered on, right? So I've seen both sides. I also know that when a coach says something, whether it's a deliverable or not, can he deliver or can he not deliver? Do you see what I'm saying? So, I listen a lot, right? In my world of business, you do a lot of listening, right? You try to use people's words against them, when you're negotiating at the table, right? And I have to be honest with you, one thing I noticed about the schools that were recruiting Peter, they were very genuine about delivering the message to him. Look, here's what we see in you. Here's what we like about you. Here are some of the concerns that we have. They were very genuine in the whole process. I think all the programs are of high level, high integrity guys. I think Mario Cristobal in Miami was a high level, high integrity guy. Coach Pry, Brett Pry down there at Virginia Tech, that staff as well. I think James, is a high integrity guy. I think his staff, exudes that. So, I vetted him accordingly as a parent. I asked him some hard questions. And, I don't think we give our college coaches enough credit for what they do, to be honest with you. These guys, when you look at the level that these guys are coaching, and I think Franklin's the exception because it's such a we are world, right? We are is a freaking monster, man. It's a global brand. You see what I'm saying? You go to Virginia Tech, it's a good brand. It's a popular brand. You go to Miami, it's a good brand. It had its day. But Penn State, man, that's a global brand. You guys, we're everywhere, right? Penn State's everywhere. Well, he's not only developing football players, he's raising young men, right? It's 80, 90, 100 young people. But not only the football players, what about the staff that comes with that he's also coaching, right? To become professionals. You see, not his coaching staff, the secondary staff that's helping with recruiting and the interns and all those people, right? So it's a hard job, man, to be a head coach in college football. You see what I'm saying? And it goes beyond just coaching the X's and O's. You're developing character in both men and women because your staffs are both. You know what I'm saying? And, those guys have a tough job. So I vetted them as best I could as a parent and as a businessman, to be honest with you. I called shit on shit and I called truth on truth. You see what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, I thought all three programs were very good, and we settled on State College for all the right reasons.
What was something in particular that James Franklin did that wowed you or impressed you the most as a parent?
I think, as a parent, I think the way he runs his operation and he knows everybody's name, right? And he runs that program like a ship, man. It's on time. It's organized. Like the minute we left on our recruiting visit, we had an itinerary and everything happened as the itinerary said. There wasn't any wasted time or what do we do now? What's going on? And all the information flowed accordingly when it came down to you being on the visit, to academics, to NIL, to everything, to selecting your degree. I mean, everything that goes on with that program, we've been well informed. And not only him, but his staff relays that message. That's the hardest part is the staff relaying that message. So I've been very impressed with his ability to be organized, right? And then I'm also very impressed on how loyal players are towards him, right? Like you hear certain things, right? You got people that love him. You got people that say, oh, he's never going to win the big one, or you got guys say, if he can't beat Ohio State, I don't give a crap about him, right? But at the end of the day, man, like the guy runs a multi-billion-dollar brand, right? And I'm very impressed with how he does it. And I'm very impressed with how genuine he is with his players. Like he actually loves his guys. Like there's a genuineness there about his guys, right? And he's honest with them. He says, hey, man, you're not a first-round pick. You shouldn't leave. And if you are a first-round pick, he says, man, go make your money. He's honest, right? He knows that. And he's told guys to leave and they stay. You see what I'm saying? So his whole staff is that way, which is pretty neat. So that's probably one of the most impressive things about him. I have yet to see something that hasn't been accurate. Now, it is the recruiting process, and I know things, Peter got to go in and earn it. There's a bunch of variables that still go into it. but I'm impressed by how he runs that operation. I really am.
It
You
feels
mentioned
like.
Go
Go ahead,
Steve.
Darren. Go ahead.
I just said I was going to say you mentioned everybody's favorite three-letter acronym, NIL there. How
Yeah.
did that come up in the conversation? Not even just at Penn State, but really amongst the three schools that Peter was involved with.
So we did not talk about NIL with Peter until probably we had it down to the last three. Okay, that was not in our equation. You see what I'm saying? I feel right now the NIL is great for the players, and I think it's a great opportunity for the game of football at the college level. It's a little bit renegade right now. It's scary because there's no real infrastructure, no structure to it. There's no sidelines, there's no boundaries, right? Guys are just kind of doing some things right now. So I think short term is going to hurt the game a little bit. But we were highly focused on what school was going to deliver and feed Peter's focus to become a professional in life. Okay. And everything revolved around that, right? Everything revolved around us going to a school that had a great, great academic base, right? Had his business degree. He wants to study business and be in finance and go into investment banking, right? Penn State has a great business program. Miami had a great business program. Virginia Tech had a great business program, right? It checked all those academic boxes. Was it a safe campus, right? Check those boxes, right? How was the alumni base? Man, all three had great alumni bases, right? So it just had to start checking boxes. And then at the end, the last box that was left was the NIL, to be honest with you. And then we had all three schools just explain to us how they handled NIL, right? And that's how we came about. It wasn't like there was a big number thrown at us or somebody threw a check at us. Nothing to do with it. I didn't give a crap about that, to be honest with you. And I wasn't letting Peter focus on that because that's short term, man. That's short term gains because they could pull that crap at the end of the year. They could pull it and you're stuck looking. You see what I'm saying? So the focus has to be, you've got to be somewhere, A, they want you, and B, that you can see yourself being at if football doesn't work out. You see what I'm saying? So that was kind of the focus.
That focus sounds old school in NIL world, right? Like, because now guys are moving and my year doesn't go the way I want it to go and I have the flexibility. From a parent's perspective, what does commitment look like to you? Like if Peter says the first year, hey, Dad, I don't know, like it wasn't exactly what I thought, like, or even as you watch it,
yeah,
what does commitment look like in your world?
I think commitment is something you assess, right? I mean, you have to assess, where is he at in that program? Where is he at in his school as well, right? I could tell you pretty quickly if Peter goes to State College and, I'm going to watch some practices, I could tell you pretty fast if he's going to be a guy that's going to compete for position. Okay. And I could tell you pretty quick if he's going to be a backup guy. I mean, I assess it, right? I can see it, right? I'm not a parent that's going to sit there. My kid's a first round draft choice. No, I mean, there's a process that goes into this development that he has to hit certain targets along the way, right? Now, am I gonna let Peter say, hey, I'm not playing my first year, I'm out of here? It's like, oh, hit the brakes, young guy. There's a process to success, and it doesn't happen just because you showed up on campus. You see what I'm saying? There's certain steps you got to earn certain things along the way, and that's I think the problem we have in today's society is these young people go to these programs and they give them this money and they make them these promises, and now suddenly they have to battle for positions, right? And honestly, I think they get scared of the battle, right? They fear the loss of the battle, and if you lose, there's lessons in the loss, right? So learn from that shit, man up, and go to go to spring or wait for your opportunity to get on the field and show the coaches, right? There's something funny about sports, man, that has always on the coach's side drives me crazy, is when parents come to me and say, why isn't my kid playing, right? And they ask me this question, but they don't want the answer. They don't want to hear the answer, right? So as a coach, you have to be very careful how you tell parents that because you really like the kid, right? You really want the kid to do well. You really want to develop this athlete, right? And you see potential. So I've always told parents, don't ask me why he's not playing. Why don't you ask me what he needs to do to be playing, right? Tell me, hey, coach, what does John or Bill or Sharon, what does he have to do, coach, to get some extra reps in a game or extra reps in practice? Is there something he's not doing? You know what? I bet you I could chart a list of stuff that he can do that'll give him a better opportunity to get on the field, right? And that's how you compete. So that would probably be the thing that I would do is Peter's not on the field. I would probably talk to the coaches and say, hey, Peter, you got to be your own advocate, bro. Daddy ain't going into the talk for you. Ask them what you got to do to get your ass on the field, right? And what you can do better to get on the field and where your deficiencies are at and why they're not confident to put you on the field. That way you can work on it, but they can have confidence to put you on the field.
You mentioned parents there and what they, in that question, you've seen this from enough sides. I'm curious what the fans, people who don't have a dog in the fight, not know about recruiting or seem to generalize about recruiting and recruits. I mean, you see people talking and hear, like, what do people just not know about this, or just spouting off just because they and they're bitching about because they don't know? Like, what do people not have a sense about in this process?
I think where people lose sight of the process, it's still young people, right? These are not grown-ups coming to play ball, right? They're kids, man. Some of these kids don't even know how to do the laundry, man. And they're being thrusted into having money. They're being thrusted into the limelight, right? There's a lot of, I think, stress on kids today going to play college football. A lot of stress. Heck, there's kids that their families rely on them to play football. Like, this is crazy. Like, honest to God, like, we were on some recruiting visits. Some young people, like, their families are relying on them getting NIL money. Like, I'm like, wow. Imagine being, 16, 17, 18-year-old, and you have to send money home because your brothers and sisters got to eat. You see what I'm saying? Like, so I think that's a reality of this process, right? And coaches got to maneuver through that. You see what I'm saying? They got to be able to navigate that recruiting, that part of the recruiting process. But I think they just got to understand it's still amateur sports, man. It's still kids, right? That are trying to, make away from themselves. So, from the fans' perspective, I would say that that's probably the one area that I see that they say things about players like they're adults via social media, and that kind of rubs me the wrong way sometimes. They'll say, "Oh man, that guy just flat out sucks." Like, come on, man, don't say that. You know what I mean? Like, they're harsh in their ways, and so that bothers me a little bit because it's just not a good way to approach a young person trying to develop and get ahead in life. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
The ink isn't dry on the NIL form yet, but throughout this process, for you as a dad, what's the one moment that's made you the most proud?
Yeah. Honestly, I think I'm very proud of how Peter has handled the entire process. He's been very focused. He's shown some pretty good business skills at a young age, right? He's very analytical. He's asked some very good questions. He's been able to see, the Ouija board, even with Penn State, right? Like he heard the media talk about the receivers, and then, the coaches get on there and talk about the receivers, and they talk about the receiver room, and he asked some pretty tough questions. He's like, why are we putting the receivers out there like that? Why aren't we trying to protect them and keep that in-house? You know what I'm saying? Like, so he's thinking like a business person, right? Like, there's nothing positive about being negative about the receivers. Those guys got to go back into the receiver room and figure out how to be better, right? Well, when you start being negative, some of those guys shut down. You know what I'm saying? So he's really thought about the process, and he really knew that he needed to feel like he was going home somewhere. And Penn State felt that way. He felt it when Coach Hagan came in. As full disclosure, we weren't even considering Penn State when the other receiver coach was there. It wasn't even in the cards. There just wasn't a connection. There wasn't anything there for Peter. When Coach Hagan's came in, it changed. Marcus Hagan, he was very transparent with Peter. He talked to him. He built a relationship with him because that's the guy he's going to spend time with. You know what I mean? That changed, and he gave Peter the comfort to say, man, this guy's really going to help me develop, and he's really going to care about what my next steps are in life, right? So I'm very impressed that he was able to look through the bullshit, right, and the crap, and narrow that thing down. And he was the one that came to us and said, I think this is it. And he gave us the reasons why,
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. I want to leave you with this. Are you ready to wear blue and white on Saturdays? Are you good with that? Okay.
Yeah, listen, I'm gonna tell you right now, the minute we committed, I went and bought everything blue and white because they were willing to flip the bill. When you're really, hey, listen, when you're gonna pay $50,000 a year in tuition, and you're gonna take that off my back, I am happy as hell to wear an S on my chest, an S on my hat, whatever you want, I'll rock it. So yeah, I'm excited. I just think, I'm amazed. I've been blessed to play there. And I got to tell you, when you're on the field, it's an amazing feeling to play there because the crowd is powerful. The environment is powerful. But to go there now and be on the sideline, and be on the home side with you, with Penn State, and to know that my son gets to experience that from this side, it's very exciting that we get to be a part of this journey. And I know that's one thing that Peter always wanted. He said, I wanted to play in front of a big crowd, and Penn State, is that, and the fan base is phenomenal. I mean, what a great base to be a part of. Every time you go, the people are very polite. You know what I mean? They're great. And 110,000 folks, man, that's a lot of people cheering, man. That's awesome. It's awesome.
All right, cool. Pete. Well, thank you for your time. This was an awesome interview. A lot of fun, a lot of energy. Best of luck to you, but best of luck to your son as well.
Yeah, man. Thank you guys for having me, and I look forward to seeing you guys up there. And we'll see what the future holds. I'm hoping he can go up there and compete and earn a spot on that roster and earn some playing time, man. He got to get down and dirty. Got to get on special teams first. Got to carry the water bottle and earn your way. Got to earn your way.
Thank you, Steve. I think it's funny. You could tell he was getting ready for the idea of wearing blue and white and trading in that blue and gold. And I think he seems genuinely excited about it. And I think that's a good dad right there, I think would be my takeaway.
I don't think he does anything half, right? Like, so that's great. All in. And what a practical parents thing. Oh, you're going to pay the tuition? Yeah, I'm going to buy some clothes. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's yeah, that's easy. That's an easy no-brainer decision.
Right. I mean, and when he played at Pitt, they struggled, but he fought his rear end off, and then he was at the Steelers for 2 years. I'm pretty sure he completed one pass in his career, and it was to Hines Ward in mop-up times. So he's like 1 for 1 with a pass completion to Hines Ward. And I think the other Steelers trivia with him is I think he's the last person to wear number 7 before Ben Roethlisberger. So, and he made his home in Pittsburgh and 3 kids and his good head on his shoulder. So I'm glad to have him as part of the Penn State family. It's going to be cool.
Yeah. I think the most interesting thing was the NIL discussion there, because I think that's on everybody's brain right now. That was interesting to me just because I think some of that is also probably the lens that you look at life through, or your lens of what your life situation is, and I think that comes into play there. I think the other thing that was really important to hear about was the relationship process, and I feel like we hear that word a lot with recruiting, and it almost feels you just kind of hear it ad nauseum, that to the point where it doesn't have it mean a point, but you can actually hear and see in that interview the impact that those relationships can have. And that's really what this boils down to. It doesn't necessarily boil down to the fact, oh, I'm going to go here and get all this NIL money. It's who am I spending this time with and how am I going to maximize that time together?
Yeah, I thought that was, Pete's never BS'd me of anything that I know of, right? And it seemed honest there about that. And I thought, what drove home the NIL and relationship piece being sincere was his kind of not calling out, but saying, hey, the situation that some other people are in where they're expecting the NIL money and they need it to do things, right? Or they want it to do, like the kids were on the hook to raise money for the family. That's a pretty honest assessment from one parent looking at other families that are in the process, right? Not judgy, that's just their situation. So it was good to hear. It's neat to hear something from the parents' perspective about it, even a little bit about what recruiting looks like.
Yeah, I think that was great. So thanks to Pete for joining us. That was a really fun interview we had there. All right, let's move on. The big news of the weekend. Penn State has allegedly maybe sort of hired a defensive coordinator. The Board of Trustees hasn't met to whatever those meetings are called that they have to sign the contract or whatever. But it sounds like former Indiana coach Tom Allen is going to be coming to State College to be defensive coordinator. It's kind of funny because I think collectively a lot of people thought the second that Tom Allen was fired and everybody kind of knew what was going to happen with Manny Diaz is, what about Tom Allen as defensive coordinator? I don't know. I think I like it. And I think that's about where I'm at with it. I think I like it.
Why the hesitation?
Here's why the hesitation. It's just because of his energy. It's very strong. It's very strong. And I think that's the main thing that I've always kind of thought. Tom Allen seems like a certified weirdo, and that's coming from somebody that considers himself a weirdo. And he seems like he has his heart in the right place. It's just he comes off as a lot. And that was surprising to me, I guess, that James Franklin wants that on his staff. But then when you kind of look at it from the practical standpoint, let's look at like previous defensive coordinators, right? Bob Shoop, Brent Pry, Manny Diaz, and now Tom Allen. Kind of all sort of Franklin's right-hand man, or kind of sort of somebody that he seemed like James Franklin can trust. And I think that's why practically this hire was made. And I think that's why he went after a former head coach once again in this whole decision-making process. I am excited to see what Tom Allen also can do with the defense, or with the talent that he couldn't probably get in Indiana, because I think that's going to be the biggest game changer for him. Is, he had a lot of interesting and good schemes. Look at how tough they played Penn State or even Ohio State over the years. And when you put that together, some of those deficiencies, I guess, result in talent on the field that Penn State has. Like, a lot of Indiana kids are 2 and 3 stars versus 3, 4, 5 stars that you get at Penn State. So I think that's the biggest thing that I've noticed. It seems like a lot of players like him. So that's why I say I think I like it. Steve, how do you feel about it?
I think almost the same, and I couldn't verbalize it that way when I first saw it. It was just like, I don't know about this. Seems kind of quirky. But the more I thought about it, head coach, right? In a place, a head coach knows not to undermine the existing head coach. So that's great. Like, he's going to come in, focus on his defense, do what he's supposed to do. Quirky as a coordinator is much better than quirky as a coach. And it's easier to be quirky or hide that a little bit as part of a program where it's just easier to win. I mean, Indiana is it might be one of the toughest jobs in the country for all the reasons everybody knows, right? The teams you're playing, the talent you can get and all that. So yeah, I think it frees Allen up to have better talent, coach up his X's and O's, bring the energy and the loyalty from the players that apparently he does from his players and will gain from the Penn State players probably, and be in a position to succeed. So I think at first I was probably not impressed. I was like, okay, that should be okay. But I may be a stronger okay now after a couple of days of thinking about it. And it doesn't seem like he's going to be, and I don't know that Manny Diaz was, but he's not going to be a personality threat to James Franklin, right? He's not going to be like the defensive coordinator that's more popular. He's just going to be that guy who knows what he's doing, talks to the media twice a year, and the people are like, okay, that's kind of cool. As opposed to clearly going to get another job somewhere. Like, I think he could be here for a little longer than Manny Diaz was, right? Like, I think this feels more like get comfortable, get here, and it's 4 years or so at least, unless something's really crazy, because I don't know, like, because he hasn't won as a head coach. Diaz kind of got forced out, felt like it was a raw deal at Miami. Things might have been coming along. And Allen may be better than Indiana because the Indiana job's so tough. But I think I'm leaning toward more toward good than just okay after thinking about it a couple of days.
I certainly have more opinions or more feelings on this hiring than the Andy Kotelnicki hire, and take that what you will, I guess. Like, I at least once you get past Tom Allen, the personality, you can see the track record here. It is a proven hire to a degree, even if, I mean, he had to be a good defensive coordinator somewhere to get that job at Indiana. Like, you don't just get handed a head coaching job somewhere. And it is, for as much as it is Indiana, it still is a Big Ten job. Like, they're still going to make the hire because they think he can do something with it. And he at least made Indiana fun for a couple seasons there. At least kept them relevant and interesting. What I haven't done is really sat down, and we're gonna do it, I think, right now, and sat down and thought through the optics, I guess would be the best way to say it, of the fact that James Franklin hired the guy that was the coach of the team that derailed the 2020 season, and then basically set the program back for a year. And that hire probably has to work out in the way of, at minimum, at least the second round trip to the college football playoff, maybe just a trip to the college football playoff in the 12 teams era every other year at minimum type thing, all on the back of the fact that his defense is going to rest with this guy that set his program back. And I think that was also maybe some of the head scratching processing that I went through this weekend with the hire.
I think that's a fair roundabout assessment of the logic of it. Although I think it's not his fault that the program got set back. Like, his signature win just happened to come against Penn State.
Yeah.
Right. And Penn State didn't deal with it very well. So Yeah, but I think that's a good assessment, right? Like, I mean, they've got to, but it's every hire. It's offensive coordinators, everything else now. Next season, as we talked about before, is the season where Penn State probably needs to be one of 12. I mean, again, the expectations are they'll be one of 12. Again, I don't think there's any pressure on the coach next year if they're not in the top 12. I just don't. I don't think it'll change next year yet because the buyout number's too big and people aren't still too big and they aren't talking about that. But I think people's expectations are next year. Yeah, look at us. We were 10th this year. Good Lord, why won't we be in the top 12 next year? Forget what the schedule looks like from afar, whatever, and that the 5-game run that looks kind of tough now. Penn State should be there, I think, is what fans feel. Some fans feel. Maybe most fans feel.
Well, and the body isn't even cold on the 2023 season, but I think that's a fair way to look at it. I think I've said that they need to make the playoff next year. Like, there's no excuse. Penn State is not a top 4 team in the country. Penn State is not a top 4 program in the country right now. The numbers would suggest that the wins, but they certainly have what's the stat that keeps going around about how they're going to be the first, if they win the Peach Bowl, the first school to win all of the New Year's Six, and they've done 3 of those in however many years now. So yes, to me, they are a top 10 to 15 program. So can you be in that top 12? And I think that's why with this hire, it is why I think he went with somebody proven and didn't maybe go out on the limb as much. Because I think like the Mike Yursich hire, and you're kind of almost apples to oranges, right? Like the Mike Yursich hire was kind of out of nowhere just because it was not just the hiring of him, but the firing of Kirk Chiraka after the COVID season, which kind of sort of didn't count type thing. And then it didn't really work out. And it seemed like it was more of it still seems like it was more of a workplace issue in terms of we didn't get work together well. I mean, they still were putting up a lot of points. They just, in the games that mattered, the coaching wasn't there. And some of that is on the head coach more so. But James Franklin isn't a defensive coach. So I think that's why the Manny Diaz hire was such a surprise, but was a great hire. And I think that's why I'm not going to go out and say it's a great hire because I think I don't like saying that because I think the records have to kind of, or the games have to play before that's really decided. But I think that's why it's the hire that made a lot of sense. It is an aggressive one, and I'm going to say it feels like it feels like a safe hire that you're not screwing up the momentum that you built with the defense this season in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and let me go stand-up comedy. It's safe and, right? Like safe would have been in some ways internal, Poindexter or somebody else that people wanted. I think what you get from going outside the program, you get the head coach, but you get the outside the program perspective, right? Tom Allen's going to know, hey, what did you guys do for Ohio State? What did you guys do for Michigan? Like, talk me through some of your schemes and processes and why you did this and that you just don't have. If you promote from within, you're just bringing folks whose ideas who've had their voice around the table before. Someone from the outside who's capable of doing the job and certainly qualified to do the job also brings some different ideas to put around that table to discuss, to debate, to self-scout. And I think that's valuable.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. Because it gets you out of the groupthink, I guess, mentality and gets you somebody in the room that can at least question it. And a lot of the times there's good results based off of questioning something of why are you doing it this way, regardless of it's football or work or whatever. So
he's got the leeway to at least play dumb for the first year. I mean, not dumb, but to at least to ask why this and why that about processes, while somebody from within would say, okay, we've done this before, here we go, even if they're going to add their own spin on it. Somebody from the outside gets to say, why this? And he has the credibility as a head coach of saying, okay, let's listen to what he's got to say.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the other thing that we kind of want to at least allude to the fact here is, and some of it's more so the absence or the departure of Manny Diaz, is the James Franklin coaching tree it's a nice little, it's not a sapling anymore, I guess would be the best way to say it. I know that Manny Diaz him leaving was probably a foregone conclusion from the second he signed at Penn State. But
How
I
many
think
years
James
does he
Frank,
need to work with you to get to be in your tree?
I I
I mean,
think
I'm not discounting it.
well,
I'm just,
so,
is 2 years
well, but I
enough?
think yes, it is
Okay.
because because really that's only one class that Manny Diaz recruited. So you have to execute, I think, and complete that execution on the field. And that some of that goes back to the fact that you need to be hired for that position. So I think, yes, I think and I think that's interesting. And I think, I don't think, I think James Franklin, for as much crap as he takes, probably deserves a little bit of credit for that. It might not be, it might not sell tickets. It might be another social media graphic type victory,
I'll
but
make it
it's at
bigger than
least
that.
something.
No, I'll make it bigger than social media. I think it goes to, I think his coaching tree, no matter how long they've been there, Gerard Parker, who's now at Troy, that came up today, went from Notre Dame to Troy, the guy at Marshall, yeah, I mean, I think it goes to credibility as a football coach, which Franklin, everybody says he's the CEO coach, right? And the knock had been through the years, all X's and O's, game day, right? I think the more people you have out there that you've rubbed elbows with, that have coached with you, that you've been their boss, I think that brings some credibility when they've still got jobs that were promotions from the job they had with you. And I think that speaks to the football knowledge for him, which maybe twice in his 10 years, he's really gotten fired up about at news conferences and defended himself and his record. So yeah, I think it is kind of big that the tree's growing that way.
Yeah, I think I also think like going back to the top 10 program, top 15 program idea, like you have to perform to get hired, like for all of these other coaches to get hired out. And for the most part, most of them have. I think Rick Urani would be the one that like people kind of debate was he leaving, was he going type thing. But for the most part, you look at every person that has been elevated to a higher level position, whether it's internally or externally, it's because of the results that they've had. Dion Barnes is a great example of that. Brent Pry is the poster child for that. And I really think Virginia Tech's going to become a bigger problem. At least in the ACC, it just takes time for a lot of these coaches, and I think that's the issue with college football right now is we collectively don't have a lot of patience. So I don't know. I think that was just something I wanted to bring up on the podcast and chat through. All right. Anything else on Tom Allen?
Nope. Looking forward to see what he does.
Okay, cool. I am looking forward to heading to the Peach Bowl, Steve. So we're going to talk about the Peach Bowl now. If Penn State wins this game, is this Penn State's best win of the season?
Yes. Right. Because it lasts the longest, right? Too. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's there you go. I mean, they're gonna beat an SEC team that's a top 10-ish team, and they get to talk about it for the next 6 months, 8 months, whatever it is. So yes. Yeah.
I think that's about how I feel about it. And I don't know. I kind of keep getting similar feelings to how I felt last year. And I want to see how I feel after the bowl game. And I think this is why I haven't kind of like written a season recap post yet on the blog is I want to see how I feel after the bowl game in the sense that if they win this game, do I feel better about this season? And I think I will. Just because of what you laid out, the fact that they went and beat an SEC team. This team doesn't seem like Ole Miss doesn't seem like they're going to have a lot of opt-outs, if any. They're still like a relatively younger team. I think again, it's now James Franklin's going up against a very good offensive mastermind, so to speak, in Lane Kiffin. So yeah, I think this is the best win. I'll think the Iowa win forever will be the most impressive win in the season, unless they do something that really blows me away. But yeah, I think that's I think there's a lot riding on this game in the similar fashion of the way the Rose Bowl felt last year of Like once the dust settles, you're gonna go, this is things are better here than we expect or we anticipated them to be, I guess would be
Yeah,
the best way to say that.
this gets to soothe the wounds if they win over Michigan and Ohio State, right? Then being the third best team in the Big Ten doesn't feel so bad when one of them is playing in the playoff and the other one, it beats you head to head, and people assume that they're better than you. So I mean, yes, it makes it better. Doesn't make it great, but it makes it better.
No, I think that's fair. Well, the other thing is the other one beat you head to head, sure, but also had a Heisman finalist, and now their starting quarterback no longer plays at said school.
Exactly. Right.
So, I think that's interesting. Thing I'm most excited about for the bowl game is the stadium. I'm very excited to see the stadium. Everybody tells me that the stadium is incredible, amazing. So I'm excited about that. Apparently there's not a bad sight line, I've been told. I'm also excited to get some Chick-fil-A because I'm sure there'll be some form of free Chick-fil-A that will be handed out or something.
And you're doing the aquarium thing or not?
I don't think we're doing the aquarium. We are going to
Okay.
it sounds like we're going to do the College Football Hall of Fame,
Okay.
which I'm, as a history buff, I am excited about. We did the aquarium when we went to
Right.
the Auburn game. So, and we did World of Coke, even though I have my Coca-Cola here. It was not a great, it was fine. It would be a great field trip, I think would be the best way to explain that experience. So if you're listening, I would skip that. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for that. I'm excited. I'm interested to see how many Penn State people are there as well, because it feels like there's going to be a bigger contingent than normal.
Well, it's an easy trip, right? I mean, Atlanta's an easy trip. It's one flight from Pittsburgh and Philly and DC and Jersey airports. It's a reasonable drive. It's not driving all the way to Florida. So yeah, I guess I would be surprised if there weren't a sizable contingent. And I think that's an indicator of, what does it mean? And are we over the 2 losses, and are we better than, okay, we're okay being better than everybody but them, and the quarterback's going from Ohio State, and there's next year. Yeah, I guess I'd be shocked if there wasn't a good Penn State turnout.
What are you most excited about, Steve?
I'm excited to watch it on TV and not have to deal with traffic and tickets and BS and whatever else. I'm interested. I think so far, and I haven't dug into it, as in terms of all the weeds of coverage, but there hasn't been much Lane Kiffin stuff yet. There's been a couple little social media things that were kind of fun, like whether he was intended or not. Like, I'm like, okay, it'd be cool if that guy was in your conference and you had to play him once a year, right? Like there's a little bit of, he doesn't care. It doesn't feel as scripted, as buttoned down, as whatever.
I think it's the button down is correct. I think it's almost he gets that college football is weird and he accepts that. And I think you compare that with other head coaches out there that like Harbaugh comes to mind of like it feels life and death to Harbaugh. College football feels life and death.
Hmm.
To Lane Kiffin, it feels like it's like playing a video game or something. He just feels very relaxed with it. So I think that's a exciting aspect.
Yeah, I mean, his journey has just been so crazy as a coach, right? Like life and death isn't exactly a thing in his world, right? You've been fired on the tarmac in LA, you've been like it's just you've been all over the country already, and you're just having a good time. And I think that's true. I would love to get a little taste of that in the next week or so as they do some news conferences and things, just to have a little bit of fun, because these games have to be fun because they mean something if you win. You'd say they don't mean anything if you lose, right? Like that's how you spin it. But they are just about an experience and an event. So make it enjoyable and get the most out of it that way.
I want to pick your brain because I think we've maybe had this discussion before at this time of year. But I was watching the famous Toastery Bowl today. Western Kentucky came back to beat Old Dominion. Speaking of we already talked about Ricky Ronnie. But their quarterback, they showed him, they went in overtime, and he is crying. And I think all of these people, I think that those moments should be plastered or tattooed or thrown at all the people. Oh, there's too many bowls. Oh, bowl season doesn't matter. these are still college football games. These kids are still going out there putting a lot of emotion, energy, whatever it may be, into these games. And I think for me, I think that's I think that's why I am I love bowl season. I also think for me, I'm a little bit anxious about the that going forward as we expand to 12 teams because we're going to lose maybe a little bit of that. Um, but we're also going to get at the opposite end of the spectrum a more intense, heightened um, whole of that. So I don't know. That's my gripe towards all these people that say, "Oh, the famous toastery bowl doesn't matter." Show that kid crying at the end of the
Oh
game.
yeah, I think it matters to. I think all of them matter to those people that are involved, and I think if a kid opts out, it matters to the kid who's taken his place. So I think that's okay. And next season will be interesting to see what happens with losing 4 teams worth of games, 4 games worth of teams, right? Because it's going to expand by 8 teams. That's 4 bowl games of quality teams that are off the list of going to a bowl game, right? And they were struggling to get enough. They didn't have enough winning records of teams this year to make it work. So I think feels like there's going to be some attrition there somewhere, but it's not going to make sense for somebody. But the ones that, not that many though. ESPN props up most of them. A bunch of the early ones, right, or TV programming for ESPN that they're run by ESPN events. But yeah, I think they matter. They certainly matter to the people who are involved. I think it's often a junket for administrators and whatever else, and certain people on athletics departments and whatever else. But like the Peach Bowl, like I think those kind of places that know how to make their bowl a charitable endeavor for their community, I have a lot more bandwidth to appreciate them than I do the other ones that are just a TV show.
Right. No, that makes I get where you're getting at there. All right. Anything else? Anything else you want to discuss about bowls? Penn State's bowl.
No, looking forward to Penn State's bowl. Looking forward to watching the other ones. Some of the other ones. I know I'll watch West Virginia and North Carolina, I think, play and
Yeah, that'll be a
playoff
good game.
games. Like there's a couple that I looked at. I'll watch Notre Dame and Oregon State, I think, just to see what Oregon State has left with their coach gone. I'm not watching every one of them, but there's probably a half dozen or so that I'll watch. And Penn State's, that's what we're doing on the 30th. So looking forward to it.
I also think it's when we talked about this when the bowl games were announced. Penn State got lucky in terms of the fact that they're playing Ole Miss. Like this game, this is going to be, I think, a very interesting. A lot of people are going to pay attention to this game in a lot of ways. So I think that's exciting. All right. This week's Old Guy Young Guy brought to you by Steve. What do you got, Steve?
Oh, did I have to pick from that list? I gave you options, I thought.
I thought we were doing them all. Let's just do them all.
Let's do them all.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Let me find what I sent you. Okay. So my question, first one was, it's the holiday season. What do you consider a quote old guy beverage? I don't know. I mean, I just figured
I feel like anything that is a mixed drink with any form of alcohol that is not like called a painkiller or like Sex on the Beach, like any non-tropical.
So a Manhattan or something like that.
Yeah, Manhattan or like even a martini, like any of that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. When was the last time you had one of those things?
I've never had a Sex on the Beach. I've never had a martini. I think I've had a Manhattan. I don't know. I pretty much just like we have bourbon downstairs, but no.
Yeah, no, like that's the people that tell me they can taste the flavors of the bourbon. I'm just like, I taste one flavor, and that is hot and burning.
Oh, I think I think that there are tastes. I think they all taste relatively the same, but I think there are different tasting ones.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. I'm just not that my palate isn't whatever. Have you ever been caroling? That was one of the other old guy, young guy questions.
Not in a like neighborhood capacity. I feel like only just like in school productions. What about you? Is that?
I think that's probably about the same. Like, I don't think we've gone door to door, ironically enough, with any of like the groups you've ever been or whatever else. So no. Plus, I don't sing, so that's yeah.
I will say there is a caveat to that. My dad and his friends and I think this is going to be their 40th year. They every year load up in the back of a pickup truck and play Christmas songs, drive around town and play Christmas songs at people's houses. So we'll call that like semi
Yeah.
caroling.
We had Santa Claus and the fire trucks come through the neighborhood on Saturday.
We've never had that. I've never lived anywhere where that's a thing.
It did freak out my one nephew. My other nephew who had graduated from Penn State on Saturday got his picture taken with the Grinch and the Santa Claus and the fire truck. But the younger nephew who's a senior in high school was like, "What is this?" I'm like, "You don't have this? Come on." Have you ever been in a one-horse open sleigh? Oh wait, there was a follow-up there. I saw the finger.
Well,
So
I feel like that's a eastern half of the state thing. That's what I was gonna say. I don't know.
I don't know. Like it's
Maybe
kind of
not.
an interesting run. I think, the firefighters get some donations along the way. I think it's kind of a savvy move as well. Lots of kids hand out some candy canes and get some handshakes with money in them. That's probably not a bad way to raise money. So
Yeah. Okay. All right.
have you ever been in a one-horse open sleigh?
No. No.
Neither have I.
Never
No.
been in anything horsepowered that isn't a car.
And I think this will be the old, man, maybe it won't break down old guy, young guy. The best sled you ever had was what? Like, what was the sled that was super?
Ooh, we had this blue, well, we had these, I'm sure Sam and Danny had them. I don't want to call them boogie boards, but they kind of look like boogie boards. They're real slick, and you'd lay down on your stomach instead of your back because somebody thought
Did they
that
have
was a
sides
good.
or were they flat?
No, they were flat.
Okay.
It just had handles on it, nothing else.
Yeah, I think we had those. We
Okay.
had the best one we had for the girls. Like we had runner sleds when I was young, and those things you needed like crunchy hard snow to make the runner sled
Mhm.
work or it sung. But we had the round things, the round plastic things. But we had a toboggan like plastic thing when the girls were 5 and 4, and it was the winter Sam had broken her arm, and we had gotten the arm set, and like we're out there riding in the sled with the kids, and we went for the checkup, and the kids were like, the teachers like, how was your weekend? Oh, we went sled riding. And the poor doctor I thought was going to lose her mind. She was like, you did what with this arm? Like, really? I'm like, oh no, it wasn't that big of a hill. I don't know what she's talking about. Like, it really wasn't that steep. Like, she's exaggerating.
Mhm.
Luckily she didn't fall off.
Hey, I mean, Altoona is great. Like Altoona was a great place to go. Now, let me ask you a question. You said sled riding.
Yep.
I have been made fun of, and I think even by my wife for saying sled riding.
What else would you call it? Sledding?
Sledding. I've always called it
I
sled
think
riding.
either is acceptable.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe this is
But
a
I think I've
Western
said
PA
sled
thing.
riding more often than sledding. Yeah, I think either, but I
Yeah.
think either is acceptable.
I have been made fun of by friends / my wife for saying sled riding.
I think you can throw a flag on that making fun of.
Okay, thank you. No, we had some good hills. We like because in fact the one big fifth is what we called it, but nobody could park on that in the winter because it was that steep. So it's great because then you don't have to worry about hitting a car.
Self-made, exactly.
So yeah.
Perfect.
All right. That's this week's podcast. This will be the last time we talk to you before next year. Huh? Get it? So I want to say Merry Christmas to you, Steve. Merry Christmas to everybody listening. Thank you to everybody
Thank
that
you.
has been a part of the podcast this year. But we've had a lot of fun. We will reconvene that first week of the year to discuss the bowl game. But in the meantime, we're not thinking, we're going to do a newsletter. I'm going to do a newsletter. You're more than welcome to contribute, Steve, if you'd like to this week on that newsletter. That's not a passive aggressive. Like you haven't contributed, you do always contribute. So just to make that clear to everybody here that there's no rift between the Beatles. Secondly, game preview and probably some other stuff. Depending on other stuff happening, there will be some other stuff written on the blog over until the bowl game. There will be the usual game preview and everything else. That's about it for that portion. Like I said, next podcast will be we'll recap the bowl game and have some playoff games to recap and talk about and see how that goes. And other than that, in the meantime, you can catch all of that on our website, stuffsummersays.com. On that website, there's a section called With
Steve.
Steve. We've got emails. Mine's Darian at stuffsummersays.com. Steve's is
Steve at stuffsummersays.com.
5 stars, thumbs up, all that. And lastly, then we've got Twitter handles. Mine's at stuffsummersays. Steve's is
At Steve Samsel.
all right. Goodbye. Merry Christmas.